Hey guys, how you going? Just want to continue that thought from last week in these midweek devotions. Last week we began looking at 1 Thessalonians 5:16 to 18. It says this, "Be joyful always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." Be joyful always. And we recognize that a Christian joy isn't so much a feeling as it is a choice. Be joyful always. Now, we could easily respond and say, well, how could I possibly be joyful always when there's hurts and there's pains and there's difficulties? And perhaps that even we could say that God has allowed these to enter my life. And it's a fair question, I guess. But we have to make this distinction between happiness and joy. Happiness is very often dependent on external circumstances, where joy is more of a internal spiritual positioning, I guess, and a choice in our lives. Now, for many of us, you'd say, well, how do I get that? You know, how can I get beyond that sense of my happiness being dependent on the circumstance of life? Because really we're restricted when we operate that way. We either respond to the temperature in our life. We're like a thermometer rather than being a thermostat and dictating the joy in our lives. You know, and joy is really based on our response and our choice to trust God and His faithfulness regardless of what is happening in our lives. Now, there's a great story I heard from Nathaniel Hawthorne. He's an author from the 18th century. And he came home one day heartbroken to his wife and said, look, I've been fired from my job. And his wife's response was amazing, because she said, now you have time to write that book. I always knew you were going to write that book. Now's the right time. He said, well, how can we possibly do that? And she said, well, I've been saving up a little bit of money week by week from the housekeeping, and now we've got enough to last a whole year. So now you can go away and write that book. Now, her response was optimistic and hopeful and full of joy, and it put to bed all his fear and his despondency and his unhappiness. And basically he went away and over this next period of time and wrote this masterpiece of a book, you know, and all her optimism counteracted all his negative feelings about what that was happening in his life. And he wrote a great American literature called The Scarlet Letter. And I feel like Jesus serves this same function in our lives, in believers' lives. You know, that we can tap into a resource that's beyond our own natural understanding and comprehension and go, no, I trust in God and my joy comes from that place. Hope that helped this week. Talk to you next week. See you then. Bye for now.